Hello there, Canada Files viewers. This is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files. I am here co-hosting episode 16 of Canada and Palestine, The War on Zionism, with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thanks for joining us yet again.
Thanks, Aidan.
Hello, Canada Files viewers. Aidan from the future. Thursday specifically, there has been so much happening since original recording time, Wednesday, early morning Lebanon time, mid-afternoon Vietnam time, that it's necessary to actually save it for the next week. So you're going to learn a lot in this episode still. However, there's certain things, if you don't see it this week, expect it will get hit on in the next week. Now, get back to the episode. All right, Laith. So we have many serious things to talk about in this episode. I think the obvious thing, we just have to get right to it. This terrorist attack from the Zionists on Lebanon with these exploding pagers. My goodness, like, can you give audience some detail on this? This is horrific.
Yeah, I was in the middle of the day here, and suddenly I'm sitting here actually doing a stream with Garland Nixon. And I live beside the American University of Beirut Medical Center, and there was one wailing ambulance after another. Uh, and I didn't understand what was happening. But then, as soon as I finished that stream, I look at my phone and it had exploded with all these messages. Luckily, not exploded like those pagers. And you know, what we understand now is that the Zionist colony conducted a terrorist attack, a cyber terrorist attack targeting pagers in certain geographic regions. For those that don't know, pagers don't work on the internet or cell network. They work on direct radio messaging. So, and most of the use for pagers is in the medical sector, where doctors or nurses are not allowed to bring cell phones inside hospitals, and in construction sites, and of course, the resistance groups that do not want to carry cell phones so they are not tracked and assassinated by the Zionists use also these pagers to communicate between each other. Again, these pagers use radio waves. So at least 3,000 people were injured when these pagers exploded. 300 of them are in critical condition. Until now, 10 have been martyred. Of those martyred, there is a girl of 8 years old and a toddler less than a year old that were in in different homes that had pagers sitting around. So it's clearly targeted through radio wave of regions of Beqa Valley, the south of Lebanon, and the Dahiya of the southern suburb of Beirut. Um, the pagers are of various models, but the most used ones that were exploding are the Motorola ones. This is the basics of it. The Israeli military or government did not announce their responsibility, but Hezbollah and the resistance as a whole are blaming Israel. The Israeli media have been gloating about the action and in fact gave it a operational name. They called it Operation Under the Belt, thinking that they're being snarky and smart, when in reality it just exposes again that the Zionists have no morals, no limits, no scruples, and they are the filthiest kind of fighter. It's it's a tragic day here in Lebanon, and it's getting us closer to the full-out war situation with the Zionist colony.
Certainly, yes. But as you've said in other interviews, people shouldn't expect, say, immediate strike backs. and so forth, right? The general plan of the Axis of Resistance very much is methodical strikes, but also the Yemenis, right? And this is shifting into it. The Yemenis and their strike that hit in Israel, right? There's talk that that weapon would have come from Russia, right? So can you take the audience through that situation as well?
Well, Iran had announced already years ago that it had hypersonic missiles that are homegrown, that are designed by Iranian scientists and built by Iran. Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea and Yemen are the only countries on the planet that have these hypersonic missiles. Yemen had announced their building of a hypersonic missile last year and called it Palestine 1 at the time. And that hypersonic missile was 8 Mach, the speed, Mach 8, sorry. And this missile that they used this week was a Mach 10 speed missile, and they called it Palestine 2. It is home built indigenously by the Yemenis on their land. It's not delivered by anybody else. And the Yemenis have shown us over the last years that they have the innovation and the capabilities and the knowledge to build such weapons. They fired the hypersonic missile and it reached its target in 8 or less minutes. So this is the first time we see on a battlefield the use of a Mach 10 a hypersonic missile, and the missile, had to pass through the Red Sea, where the NATO navies are in the north of the Red Sea gathered, as well as you had the air defenses of the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Sudanese, the Jordanians, and the Israelis. And it passed over all of these air defenses in the sea and the land and was not detected. Only when it was spotted over the colony of Tel Aviv did the Israeli military get alerted and fired as much missiles as it can from the air defense system that it has, and it fired from various different air system defense systems like the Iron Dome, Davis Sling, the THAADs, and the Arrow. And so a collection of at least 15 air defense missiles were fired, and they still missed their target, and the Yemeni hypersonic missile reached the goal and hit something just outside Tel Aviv, most probably one of the big bases where Hezbollah actually hit around just around Tel Aviv. So it was a announcement by the Yemenis that we're now in stage 5 of this war, that there's now a change in the tactics and weapons and loads and targets of the axis of resistance. As we see, the Israelis confirmed that we're now in stage 5. They also have moved their battle into a different stage, and we're now going to have to expect anything that comes from Hezbollah as a response to the attack, the terrorist attack, cyber attack yesterday, to also look like it's in a different stage and raise the stakes.
All right, Leith. So I think the other thing to mention in terms of the Zionist colonies' degradation, furthermore, is the firing of Defense Minister Gallant. So maybe just a little bit of your thoughts there. Not too much because their regime's going to crumble anyways, but I think the audience would want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, this is the second Minister of Defense to be fired since the beginning of October 7th. So that shows you how much incohesion there is right now in the elite of Israel and the government in general. and also the build up animosity within the military against the ruling government. So there is now schisms that are becoming very wide within the main structures that govern and maintain Israel, the government and the military. Without the military, there is no such thing as Israel. And you know, for it to come on the same day as the attack, the terrorist attack here in Lebanon, that shows you also that there was a disagreement on this terrorist action. And you know, many are saying here in Lebanon, at least from analysts that are counted as Hezbollah analysts or Hezbollah adjacent, that the terrorist attack yesterday was a retaliation by Unit 8200, the Israeli military intelligence unit within Amman. Amman is the Israeli military intelligence apparatus. And for the Hezbollah attack 2 weeks ago that destroyed their headquarters and killed at least 30 of their members. So that means that Amman conducted this terrorist attack with the support of Netanyahu and his cabinet, while the Minister of Defense that Amman is supposed to be listening to and responding to was against this action. So, you know, that, you know, is clearly creating a schism within the military itself, within units of the military that are critical to the maintenance of their battle or whatever readiness that they have. And this is just, I think, the beginning of very obvious signals that the Zionist colony is collapsing. And one last thing, Amman's director resigned last week. So again, there's chaos in the top cadre of the Zionist colony.
All right, Laith. So shifting to the Canada side, I think there's an extremely important piece of news, and that is you have Zionist MP, Liberal MP Anthony Housefather, openly declaring that he's working to get Samidoun listed as a terrorist organization, put on the terror list. And that's actually a mega danger, I think, for the Canadian left. You know, Samidoun's been they focus on the Palestinian prisoner solidarity, but they do Palestine liberation organizing overall. They actually even have a mind to the broader struggle against imperialism. When the Canfels did an event with Covert Action magazine on CIA influence in Canada, actually there were some problems with another organization in terms of getting the video handled. So Samidoun actually stepped in and made sure we could run the video side of things. And that was thanks to them, right? So they are very, very valuable in the Canadian scene. They're one of the few or maybe one of the left organizations in Canada. And you know, it's been an escalation, right? And I have an article coming out very soon about this, right? You had years of repression of Samidoun internationally, especially in Europe. The Zionists wanted to get Khalid Barakat, and then obviously Charlotte Cates, the international coordinator for Samidoun, deported, try to get Samidoun, this corporate entity, blocked. But now, since the October 7th Al-Aqsa flood operation, now it's escalated to a senator, Leo Husakos, and Kevin Vuong, the independent MP. This guy's a rabid anti-communist Zionist, like a freak. And now you have Anthony Housefather actively working on this as well. And Kate's actually going to Iran really teed off Housefather. You could tell when he made that tweet publicly, because when Charlotte Cates did an interview with Canfels for Speaker Series, one of the points she mentioned is linking the international struggle to the Canadian people, right? Because the Canadian people in general are very isolated from the global South. And that's a catastrophe, and it's a big part of the reason of why the consciousness is so disastrous in Canada. So yeah, she got a human rights award. I saw there was melting down about that. And I think it's just really important, and I'm sure you'll have much thoughts on Samidoun Laith, but for me, Samidoun is a very, very clear red line. Now I'll be blunt, your situation should have been the red line a few years ago. It should have been the red line. You Community Media Advocacy Center, you had funding for the government at the government's discretion. They wanted that. So an anti-Zionist doing this kind of national media discussions, and you can maybe talk about that more. But you just got smeared on every front, and like I'll tell you this, it was a disastrous response from the Kane left. I mean, with the camp fellows, I worked with William, and I was talking to William, and William Gingrey there. He did a good article on your situation, criticizing the attacks on you for your comments. And I then had people I won't name and the Kane left basically put hard pressure on me to cut ties with you entirely. And we didn't really have contact back then. But I refused to back off the article, and then we slowly built contact over time. And even then, I still months and months later still was getting pressure to just cut contact with you entirely, and I explicitly refused. On multiple occasions, I explicitly refused. And then when October 7th happened, the landscape changed, and you saw Palestinian groups becoming more bold because the Capitals wasn't as it has a lot. We have a lot more strength now as an organization, but we were a lot weaker, more vulnerable back then. So we couldn't fight that red line, back then when pretty much all the activist groups in Canada just let you get drown. Um, but but that what Samidoun can't be isolated. It can't be let down. You found your way up regardless, and obviously I'm thrilled to co-host the show with you. But Samidoun, like, again, this has to be a red line. This has to be a
Oh,
red line in terms of Canada for Samidoun. So it's just, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I personally know Khalid Barakat and Charlotte Cates for decades now. They are honorable organizers, activists, revolutionaries that have done so much and given so much of their health, of their life to liberation in Palestine and anti-imperialism in general, as you pointed out correctly. And you look at how the German government declared them a terrorist organization, and now following suit, the next Nazi country in this planet, which is Canada, the next safe place for Nazis other than Germany, Canada, is following suit in the steps. And I would say this is clearly the beginning of a new stage of repression that we're seeing over the last few weeks in the West, whether it's the arrests of journalists like Richard Medhurst or former MP Craig Murray in the UK, and many others, or activists like Sarah Wilkinson. So this is now the beginning of this new stage. They are moving as fast as possible into mass repression and creating a political prisoner class specifically before we get to the next stage, which is mass incarceration of Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, and anyone that stands in solidarity with the liberation of Palestine. And that stage will get to when we get to the next stage in this war on the ground. But these are the warning shots. And I would say, thank you for bringing up my case from 2 years ago, which, by the way, hasn't been resolved yet. And we're still in courts, not trying to figure out where we're going there. But when this happened 2 years ago, it was the way that the left responded, activists seen in Canada, was an indicator of the weakness of this left, of how inundated it is with liberals, not real revolutionaries. And because my case was very simple, my case was speech. Here is a person speaking, not doing anything, and is using very careful language, purposefully not using even swear words, calling Zionists bags of human feces, right? And using the word Jewish supremacy and Jewish white supremacy. And so those, and I called Zionism genocide, infanticide, femicide, ecocide. These were 2 years ago. The posts got me virtually banned, ethnically cleansed from the virtual reality, and a target of all of the Zionist establishment in Canada, including all the media. And all of the left decided that this easy case of freedom of speech will be the reason that they give up all their rights. They didn't want to defend the easy case of freedom of speech. They gave up their rights at that moment. And today we're in this stage where they haven't defended the basics of freedom of speech. How are they going to defend the bodies of people as they are dragged into political prison, dungeons of Canada? I think it's kind of a little bit late, but maybe people will get radicalized and actually do something at this point. And in general, I know that not only Canada Files, but many other people that gave me space after the attack by the Zionists, specifically in Canada, people that gave me spaces in Canada, came under attack themselves and pressure to kind of purge me and not allow me this space. And I know that the leadership of this campaign against me within these leftist circles were leading figures in the independent Jewish voices. I will say the name if you're not. I know that you're not going to say this or others, and it hurts to see people that claim to be anti-Zionist Jews do this, but it's an indicator of actually again how weak the anti-Jewish circles, the anti-Zionist Jewish circles in Canada are. They are more interested in policing the speech of Palestinian Canadians than confronting the Zionists. And they they punch down while I punch up. While I punch up at House Father and Erwin Cutler and the Prime Minister and the Minister for Health and the chair of the CRTC for a decade, they punch down on a Palestinian. They're not better, these quote unquote anti-Zionist Jews, in a lot of ways when they are dealing with Palestinians. They're not better than the
All right,
Zionist Jews.
so let's talk about a situation, and it's going to make sense in a second. So this situation for folks in Sudan, it's a very nasty situation. You have the military, you have this UAE-backed RSF, and you have a program that's supposed to bring in these Sudanese folks to Canada. But there's heavy delays and there's actually been no arrivals, according to Globe and Mail. And where does that sound familiar? It sounds familiar because there was supposed to be 5,000 Palestinians, slots for Palestinians coming in from Gaza, right? And take a look at how that's not coming at all. At all, right? It's a slow dribble, if anything. And we see obviously when there's this rhetoric around immigration now, Ukrainians, there's no questions at all, right? They get in, they get priority, they're welcomed, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, if you're Sudanese, if you're a Palestinian, all right, they just take their sweet time. So it's just a quick thing, but it's just it just kind of shows the state of the Canadian government, right? It's ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah, and they are, clearly the West is on a mass extermination campaign on in this whole planet. Sudan is living this genocide that is living because the puppet vessels and proxies of the US are on purpose, doing this quote unquote civil war, this theater of civil war to empty Sudan, to kill its populations, and to loot its resources from underneath its indigenous population. And the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, the Turks, the Germans, the French, the Italians, the Americans, they're all, and the Canadians are all involved in creating this theater that we see. So the Canadian government has no interest in taking in refugees. They want to see more Sudanese people dead. They want to see more Africans, Asians, and Latin Americans dead in general. That's there. And they want to have the right to go and mine the resources in Sudan and other places. By the way, Sudan has one of the largest gold reserves in the world, and it should be one of the richest countries in the world, but colonialism and imperialism doesn't allow it to.
All right, Leith, so let's talk about the situation in terms of the Canadian by-election, specifically La Salle et Verdun. You had Craig Sauve, who was the Social Democratic NDP candidate. He obviously put the Palestine flag on his campaign materials, talked about ending the genocide. He lost the federal by-election race. So I don't know if it's much of a story there. It's obviously that a politician is calling it a genocide. It just kind of it's something. It sparked a little organizing, but again, the peak event of it all was seeing Mayor Weinstein being like, "Hell yeah, Bloc Québécois got in, guys." Like that just was the cherry on top of that whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's shows you how the Zionists, just like in the US, they don't, as long as the politician is on their side in terms of Zionism and genocide of the Palestinians, they don't care what color they wear. And looking at the degeneration of the Bloc Québécois and the Quebec nationalist movement from being a leftist movement in the 70s to being a nationalist, fascist, right wing movement in our days now. This shows you how the power corrupts, how money corrupts, how media corrupts whole movements. And, the Quebec nationalism of the 1970s, and we know some of those who identify with that kind of Quebec nationalism doesn't exist in reality now. And we see even those old cadre of the Quebec nationalists actually shifting the same way as, and becoming more and more anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim. So I wasn't surprised that Craig Sauve lost because it is a hard sell in La Salle Verdun area, given that it was always a hotbed of Quebec nationalism. This is where many of the leaders of the Bloc Québécois and the Parti Québécois spoke, gave their speeches over the decades in the stadium, the public stadium in Verdun. So it was going to be a far off possibility that the NDP wins this seat. It was always back and forth between liberals and the Bloc Québécois. And, the Zionists bet on all the horses, and that's what they're good at. And I think not many people understand this tactic that the Zionists have yet.
All right, Leith. So I think we're going to leave it there for this episode. So to the Canfell's audience. If you appreciate the analysis in this show, support both the journalism of the Canada Files and of Free Palestine TV with an annual or monthly or one-time donation. Laith, as always, thanks for joining the Canada Files for this episode of the show.
Great to be with you, Aidan.
Okay. All right, audience, thank you for being here all the way to the end. Goodbye.